You're listening to Foster Carer Stories on the Adoption and Fostering podcast. In this episode, Pip shares her experience with her husband Stuart of being foster carers of several children over the last 5 years.
We decided to foster, I think we've been thinking about fostering for a long time. I hear that a lot when people talk to us about fostering. And when I say I'm a foster carer, they say, I've always wanted to foster. And I had 4 children at home, all home educated. And we had no extra space in our house because you need to provide a room that's just dedicated for that child. And so I thought, we're not going to be able to do this. And then slowly but surely, my children have gone into school to do their GCSEs. And I was left just with my youngest daughter at home. And the others were in school during the day. So I had a little bit of space in my day. And also we managed to extend the house and give my daughters each a room of their own because they were previously sharing. And also provide one room for a foster child. And then we just rung up and spoke to the lady at the end of the phone who asked, very sensible questions. And we just went from there. I'm not sure I could say there was one motivation for fostering. I think we've always had a house full of kids. I've always looked after other friends' children, if they've been going to work or we've had children for the weekend to give friends a break or to do, I don't know, we've just always had a house full of children, I suppose. And I had my children home all day, every day. And so I think as they were starting to leave, well, not leave exactly, they were only going to school, but as they were not home all day, I was kind of thinking, I've got space in my life and I've still got quite a lot left to give. And actually, I really enjoy having children around. And I think it was as simple as that. It was just that I just enjoy having them around. So I think when we first went into fostering, I think I'd slightly bought into the kind of rescue narrative that actually these children needed a home, away from whatever situation they were in, and that we could provide them with love and all the things they needed. And actually, that just what they needed was love, and they needed a home to live in and people to care for them. I think my experience has been that the children feel far from rescued, and that actually it's just so much more complex than that. And I think over time, my motivations for fostering, going back to the motivations, have completely changed. I think I'm more wanting to work with families and wanting to, I don't want to say do a good job because it's a calling as well as a job kind of thing, but I just wanted to really make a difference for those children, but also make their return home or their move to adoption or what, whatever their future held, be as positive as possible. So actually, yes, I've kind of changed my focus and the way that I think about it just over time, really. So have I found my experience of fostering? Yes, I found it much harder than I expected it to be. I think I thought I've raised 4 children. They haven't been particularly difficult children, but, we haven't had a completely clear run. And I thought I'd pretty much seen everything. And I realised that I'd really seen nothing. And that all the methods that I was using to deal with my children's behaviour were not going to work with the children that were coming into my home. And I think it's made me more compassionate and more trying to find the right words here. I think it's made me think more carefully about what's behind behaviour. Whereas I think previously with my children, I've kind of used a more behaviouralist approach with them, and then with the children that were coming into my home, if I was starting to say to them, well, if this happens, then we won't do this. And then they would automatically do the thing that I'd asked them not to do. And then suddenly I'd be in a position where whatever I'd promised, I'd then have to say, oh, hold on a minute, I'm going to have to not do this now. And I was starting to realise that actually all the things that I'd used previously weren't going to work. And that actually sometimes I needed to say, we're going to do this, whatever happens. And whatever you throw at us, we're still going to go out for the day, or whatever it was that we would have done. Whereas I might well have said to my children, if you carry on like this, we're going to have to stay home. And I think it was just a complete 180 turn, or 360, whatever it is, a complete turnaround for me in my parenting, learning just a different way to deal with the children and a different way to communicate with them, actually. And I think I've really grown over that time. And I think my children have seen me grow because they've said to me, gosh, we wouldn't have gotten away with that on various different occasions. But I think they've seen me reacting differently to the children. And I think that they've learned quite a lot through that as well. So, yeah, it's been really positive, but it's been totally different, I think is where I'm at with that. What would I do differently? I think I would have put a lot more thought into considering what my triggers were, and I think I would have gone back over my past and my upbringing, and actually maybe even have had some therapy for some of the things that trigger me, because I have really discovered every single trigger that I have. And so I think it would have been helpful for me to have gone through that in much greater detail before we started to foster. I think you do go through it in the preparation because you have the social worker coming over pretty much every week, and you do go into ever such a lot of stuff. But I think I had a kind of attitude, it'll all be fine. But actually, I think I probably needed a little bit more work there. And over time, I've had to go over a few things and thought, goodness gracious, that's a trigger for me. And I need to recognise that that's a trigger for me and back off. And that's where it's been great to have my husband, who then could step in and say, okay, we'll just tag team here a bit, because actually I can see that she's getting really triggered by this. We'll swap in, and that's been great. I don't think I ever appreciated the impact on my children. I thought that these children would come into this home and we would be able to love them. And naively, I think we would be able to see them move on with it having less of an impact than it actually had. I think when we had children for the first time and a sibling group and they moved on, we were broken, absolutely broken. It took us quite a long time to recover from that, and it certainly took my teenage girls a long time to recover from that, because they truly loved those kids, and actually to see them be parented by somebody else was traumatic for all of us, and to see them leave and to be getting up in the morning and them not be there. And I don't think I'd really appreciated that was going to be so hard for all of us. I think from a sort of negative point of view, I think one of the other hardest things is the impact that it has on my children when the foster children we're out in public and they misbehave, or we have to bail from going somewhere, or we've gone out for a meal and it's just not going to work out, and we just have to leave. And I can remember my daughter saying to me at one point, Mum, why do we have to leave everywhere? And I said, this won't go on forever, but sometimes you just have to know when to bail. But they really have had to put up with a lot, and have had to tolerate a lot of stuff. I think they get a lot less of our time than they would have otherwise had. But from a positive point of view, I think they've really learned a huge amount about other people, about how other people live their lives. They've had to take on board a lot of what other children would have been sheltered from in their lives. They've had to learn all sorts of things about the way people live their lives that most children of that age wouldn't have had to hear about, really. I think they'll be better parents for it. I hope they'll be better parents for it. I hope better grandparents for it. But yeah, they've been amazing, actually. I'm not sure what my fostering experience would be without them. They throw themselves into pretty much everything. And actually, when the children first move here, they're not really ready to attach to another adult. In fact, quite the contrary. And normally with me, they really don't want to deal with me at all. Here's another mum who's going to abandon us. Whereas they've got my children who they can, give a cuddle to, who they can attach to, and who they can ask questions of in a kind of a safe way, while they slowly get used to my husband and I, and slowly get used to the fact that actually we're not going to let them down, and we're not going to do some of the things that previous adults have done. And that takes them a bit of time. And actually our children kind of fill that gap. Whether that's fair on them or not, I don't really know. But, they certainly think the fostering is a positive experience for them, I think. What keeps us going actually is the small stuff, not the big stuff. I think it's things like seeing a child who's petrified of the bath when they first arrive with us, diving to the bottom of the swimming pool, seeing a child who's a really wobbly runner in the beginning, riding a bike, just really, really simple things. Oh gosh, it honestly is the day to day, getting up in the morning and there's a little child with their hair is absolutely wild and matted and they look like they've had a fantastic night's sleep. Those sort of things. Those are the things that keep us going. I think also what's massive for us is being able to see children after they've moved. And I know that isn't always possible, but it is just so wonderful to see them move and see them thrive, and to be able to see them grow up and to celebrate with them. That's really fantastic. I think that's one of the biggest highlights, actually. What would I tell somebody who's thinking of fostering? I think they would do well to come and spend some time with us. Or other foster carers. Really, honestly, I think they could do with going for a day out with us and seeing actually what the reality looks like. I think the skills that you think you need compared to the skills that you actually need are quite different. I think if you were thinking of fostering, I think it'd be great to really read up on trauma and attachment, and actually being on Twitter and listening to what people say day to day about what's going on in their lives would be really helpful, I think. To be honest with you, I think if I'd known the reality I probably wouldn't have done it. If I'd known the impact that it was going to have on my family, I probably wouldn't have done it. But if I hadn't have done it, we would have missed out on so much. I mean, we have had the most amazing children through this house, absolutely amazing children. And oh my goodness, they've put us through the ringer. I mean, we have had days where we just thought, I'm not sure I can do another day of this, and we've had other days where we've just thought, there is nothing we would rather be doing in the world other than doing this right now. So it takes you to the top and it drops you right to the bottom. And I think too much of the reality in the beginning might have put me off, and I would have missed out, because I think it's been amazing. But if you'd have spoken to me another week where we'd had, been called into school and had all sorts of other stuff going on, you know how it goes. Reflecting on the experience as a whole, yeah, it's been great. I think every time we move children on, we say we can't do this again. Every time. They walk out of this house and we all, we kind of pull in and we grieve and we say, never again. We can't go through this heartache anymore. And then we kind of heal and we take a bit of time off. We always take a bit of time off between children. And then there comes a point where we're all looking at each other going, hey, I think we're ready again. And we kind of start again. And that might take differing lengths of time, depending on where we're at that time. But certainly we carry on. So there must be something in it that we're enjoying. Am I glad I fostered? Yes, definitely. I wouldn't ever have it any different.